In the world of AI, we always hear that bigger is better. Bigger models, more data, more computing power. But what if the real secret to making AI smarter and way more efficient isn't about getting bigger, but actually about getting smaller? Let's dive into that.
It's a fantastic question, isn't it? I mean, we've got these massive AI models that do absolutely incredible things. But there's a catch. They're incredibly hungry for resources. They need a ton of energy, a ton of computational power just to run. And that's a huge bottleneck. It makes it really hard to run powerful AI on something small, like, say, your phone. So the race is on to make these things lean and mean without losing all their smarts.
And the main solution has a name you might already know: pruning. Yeah, just like a gardener prunes a rose bush to help it grow stronger and healthier, AI researchers are pruning neural networks. The whole idea is to strategically snip away the unnecessary parts, these things called parameters, to make the model smaller, faster, and here's the key: do it all while trying to keep it just as accurate.
Now, what's really wild is that this isn't some brand new idea somebody cooked up in a lab. Nature totally got there first. Our own brains do this. It's a process called synaptic pruning. As we grow up, our brains literally get rid of the weaker connections to make the more important ones stronger. It becomes way more efficient. So AI is basically borrowing a brilliant trick straight from biology.
So, a good way to think about a lot of today's AI models is that they're kind of like an overgrown garden. I mean, they're incredibly dense, incredibly powerful, with millions, sometimes billions of connections, but a whole lot of those connections might not actually be essential. They're just adding weight, just slowing the whole thing down. And that brings us to the most important part. If you're going to start trimming, you have to be really smart about it. You can't just go in and randomly start snipping things away, right? You need a strategy. So, how do engineers actually figure out what to cut from a neural network? Well, at a high level, it really boils down to two main philosophies. You can either take this big picture approach and remove entire processing units, we call those nodes or neurons, or you can get way more detailed and snip the individual connections between them, and those connections are called weights.
And this slide really breaks down that difference perfectly. On the one hand, you've got node pruning. Think of this as structured pruning. It's like cutting off a whole branch from a tree. It's a big move, and it can slash complexity pretty fast. Then on the other hand, you have edge or weight pruning. This is unstructured, and it's much more delicate. It's like snipping off individual dead leaves. You're just removing the tiniest connections that aren't really doing much. And as it turns out, this second method is actually the most popular way to do it.
Okay, so we know what we can cut, but how do they actually do it? It's not a one-time thing. It's a really methodical process, an algorithm that kind of guides the digital gardening shears. So at its core, the basic algorithm is a pretty simple logical loop. First, you have to evaluate the importance of every single part you're thinking about pruning. Step 2, you rank them all, from the useless dead weight at the bottom to the absolutely crucial connections at the top. Third, you just lop off a certain percentage of the least important ones. And finally, you check your work. Is the model still accurate enough? If it is, well, you might just go back to step 1 and prune a little bit more. But that brings up the obvious question, right? What exactly makes a connection important? Well, the most common way to measure this is just by its size or its weight magnitude. The basic idea is that connections with bigger numbers have a bigger impact on the final answer. Simple enough. Other more complex methods look at a combination of that weight and something called gradient information, which basically measures how much a connection helps the network learn. So think of that as finding the connections that are the most teachable. All right, so we've covered the what and the how, but there's one last really critical piece of the strategy we need to talk about, and that is when. It turns out the timing of the pruning can have a huge impact on the final result. And there are pretty much 3 main windows of opportunity here. You can prune the network before it even starts learning, kind of like starting with a leaner blueprint from the get-go. You can prune it during the training process, so you're trimming it as it grows, or you can just wait until after it's fully trained and then go in and trim away all the fat. Now, each of these choices comes with its own set of pros and cons. For instance, pruning a network after it's fully trained is super common, but it usually needs an extra step called fine-tuning. That just means you have to train the now smaller network a little bit more to help it get back any accuracy it might have lost. At the end of the day, the decision always comes down to finding that perfect balance between how accurate you need it to be and how much it costs to run. So, as we look to the future, it's pretty clear that the quest for better AI isn't just about building bigger and more powerful models.
It's also about mastering the art of making them smaller, faster, and just smarter. Which leaves us with a really fascinating thought. What if the key to unlocking the next level of artificial intelligence isn't about building a bigger brain, but about creating a more elegant and better pruned one?